Well, each week, a group of insiders joins me to offer perspective on some of the week's top stories. This week, sounding off on the 10th anniversary of the financial crisis. And it was a rough ride for the Brickyard this year. Our insiders this week, Vox Global Managing Director Mike Marker. Also, Center for Business and Economic Research Director, Ball State, Mike Hicks. And Kiwanis Youth Programs Executive Director Christina Hale. And welcome one and all to the Insiders for another edition. And Mike, we'll start out with you on kind of a somber, I guess, anniversary. 10 years, it doesn't seem like it's been 10 years, but a decade ago was the financial meltdown, the Lehman Brothers, the housing crisis, and all that took place back then. Lessons learned as you think back to how bad things got back then and fast forward to today?
Well, yeah, I mean, some really good news. We're in the second longest expansion in American history. This time next year, it'll be the longest if we can hold on to it for another year. Many of the factors that played into it have recovered. Housing is mostly recovered. Maybe in central Indiana, really good shape. Maybe outlying places still struggling.
So that's what you were saying off camera here, that recovery not even throughout the state.
Right. I mean, we've seen incomes rebound. Certainly labor markets are good. If you want a job, you can have a job today, but we're not seeing, the housing market prices and construction are now pushing back up in central Indiana. Maybe Porter, parts of Lake County, maybe Floyd County, but there are about 60 counties in the state where it's really not profitable yet to build a home. So we're at about half of new home construction where we were in pre-recession years. So we didn't have the big bust in housing because we didn't have a big boom, but we're not back everywhere yet.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we should be a little bit concerned about, because when you look at our talent attraction and talent retention, home ownership and the affordability of that is an absolute staple in that across the state and has been. So we need to watch that. And I do think when you look at income across sectors, we have a bit of a housing affordability crisis as well when you look at rents. You have more Hoosiers paying more than 50% of their monthly wages on rent and utilities, and that's not sustainable, and that trickles down to their ability to pay for ongoing education and healthcare and other life necessities. So it's homes and it's also rentals.
Yeah.
And, you know, we don't know how millennials, Gen Zers, and those to follow are going to live. You know, there are things like the tiny house movement, and they're much more transient than we've ever been before in history, aside from, you know, hunter-gatherer times, certainly in this century. However, there are some things to look at as we chessboard this out down the road, like if we ever do double-track the South Shore, which I think we will.
On the way to
housing
doing it,
stock, and that could really, truly revitalize that area of the state. There could be other transformative projects that sometimes, you know, when we decide to get a little bit more ambitious, maybe we build high-speed rail between Chicago and Indianapolis, dream bigger. That could have a positive impact.
A lot of effort being made to help diversify the economy, not just in terms of the sectors of the economy, but globally. In not one, but two international trade missions taking place in the week ahead. Governor Holcomb, Lieutenant Governor Crouch as well. One to Canada, the other to Italy. Thank you, Tracy. What do you think of that?
Well, I guess, you know, if you're governor, you get to go to Italy, and if you're lieutenant governor, you get to go to Canada. Say no more. But seeing our partnerships expand, and actually speaking of Canada, for so many years it's been our primary trade partner, you know, for at least 30 years, Mike, I think, something like that. So deepening, strengthening those relationships and allowing business to grow, develop that way is strategic and important.
Christina talked about transformative projects, and I think you could look at Electric Works in Fort Wayne as being a transformative project for that city. $400+ million project, got a boost this week with some public funding. Mike, you're a native of Fort Wayne. Right. How big is that, or important is that?
Fort Wayne's a buzz about this development project, and this is just another step in this progress. I think a lot of people have been taking a wait-and-see approach, and now I think it's ready to light this up. It's exciting, I think, for the region, because it's very much a talent attraction hub play. Most of the development looks at education and research space. About a third of it looks at innovation space. It'll certainly have retail, restaurants, apartments up there as well, and recreational space, but it's very much about driving that talent pipeline up there that's so important for the region.
Why are these projects, you see communities, Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Evansville, undertaking these kinds of projects?
Well, I mean, part of it's a regional cities initiative. It's just really move things along in those places. But, you know, I think we've, you know, maybe not done as much investment in the sort of capital projects, both private and public sector, in our major industrial older industrial cities, Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, that would be on the national scene that way. This really, I think, marks a turnaround, and it's going to bring people, it's going to bring jobs, it's going to do the type of things that those policy initiatives were designed to do.
I want to get your take also, Mike. The report came out this week from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics that Indiana among the top 10 in wage growth, which is something that's been a real challenge for Indiana for a long time.
Right. If you look at us, we should probably be in the middle of the pack in wage growth. To be in the top 10 means that not only people are moving here, but the composition of the labor force is shifting in important ways. We're seeing here in central Indiana growth in the high-tech jobs are taking advantage of a much better human capital that the city has been able to attract over the past generation or two. We've also seen a lot of manufacturing jobs, and these are mostly going to be the really advanced manufacturing jobs that pay better. So good news for Indiana, not unexpected, but certainly good news.
Changing face of healthcare. We saw another major announcement this week. Franciscan Health eyeing a $130 million investment in an orthopedic hospital in Hamilton County. The investment in Hamilton County in particular, in a number of areas, but in healthcare is substantial.
Boom, boom, boom. I guess my only regret is that healthcare is such big business in Indiana because we do tend to be one of the unhealthier states. But it certainly is interesting to see the intersection of technology, healthcare, infrastructure, and how we're going to support the good health of Hoosiers over time, particularly because access to healthcare and hospitals is not as widespread or dispersed as we'd like, county to county, statewide. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that access point is a good one, and you see different trends happening in this market. The community hospitals, smaller, more accessible hospitals like St. Vincent's Dunn and Castleton that you covered earlier. Those are important things. And with Franciscan, I mean, it's the aging population that we have, the need for hip replacements and these things, and they're responding to that.
Always like to end on sports. Certainly it was a tough week for the Brickyard this year because of the weather. The dirt track attracted big crowds, but the weather really washed a lot of the events out there. It was also a big week in college football. In fact, Ball State and Notre Dame played at Notre Dame. It was a big game. And I remember 3 years ago, I think it was 2016, right after the announcement was made of this game, there was a prediction made right on this set. Mike, Ball State, maybe close to getting a new coach, a former player. Will that make the prospects for Ball State football go north?
Yeah, we're looking forward to that Notre Dame game in 3 years, and I think it's
he
important
predicted
for
a Ball
us.
State victory.
I'm telling you right now, we got the quarterback to do it. Yeah, absolutely. It's college football breaks your heart, but I think we're looking at a good season in the fall.
Okay, you predicted a win, and I will tell you, you came pretty close because Ball State, you clearly beat the line. So it was a good game.
For an economist, that was as close as we'll ever get.
That was very good. It was a great weekend for Ball State. I know they've got IU this weekend. So Mike Hicks, Christina Hale, Mike Marker, thanks one and all. We'll be right back.
Sure.